What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cubone here. Even generations that we think of as recent can still have Pokemon that get brushed aside in favor of more popular options, even when there's nothing wrong with that particular pocket monster. And of course, Alola is no stranger to this phenomenon. You might ask yourself, what happened to Kalos? Well, I'll let you know when I figure out how to tackle that. But the Sun and Moon Pokemon have a much greater contrast in terms of Pokemon who get special treatment or not. Not only have you got Pokemon with many different form changes, but you also have specific Z moves given out to prioritize certain Pokemon, and then sometimes you have both at the same time. Of course, they invented the regional variant, and then even otherwise regular, unremarkable Pokemon can still get to be giant totems, even letting you catch some of them, meaning that there are things that the rest of the Gen 7 roster have already missed out on. So let's take a look at the top 6 best untouched Alolan Pokémon. Number 6. Bewear. Full disclosure, I have never used a Bewear before. It's on the list to get done, I promise. But even I can recognize its power. It's famous for its brute physical strength with the spine-shattering hugs that it gives, and its stats back that up with a massive attack, and surprisingly, its HP is almost just as high. Not to mention the new signature ability Fluffy that halves contact damage, so it will be able to take some hits as well as dish them out. The strong arm Pokemon is aptly named, naturally getting stab-heavy hitters like Takedown, Thrash, Hammer Arm, Double Edge, and Superpower. That's not to say that it doesn't have access to coverage moves as well. However, while its combination of normal and fighting wasn't new, only being on an event mythical form change meant that it was effectively still unused for most players. Of course, normal is never really a huge benefit in combining types, but basically being a regular strong fighting type that also happens to be immune to Ghost does give it a nice little niche. I don't think that a running Team Rocket gag in the anime counts as special treatment enough to disqualify Bewear. If it does, then maybe you could put Oranguru here or something. But it's a shame that Bewear seems to be one of the few Alolan Pokemon not allowed in Gen 9. Maybe for whatever remake happens after Paldea, because it is truly impressive how the Bewear line manages to pretty perfectly balance being adorable and actually presenting a credible threat. Plenty of Pokemon can do one or the other, but rarely can they pull off both. Number 5. Tsarina. I was considering putting Delmise here because it is pretty good, however it's found so late and so rarely in the games that it's not really worth waiting for, when honestly, Tsarina is not that far off in terms of its stats. Its defenses are comparable, and attack is just barely lower than Delmise, but that's made up for by being much faster than the Haunted Anchor, and of course by being obtained much easier and earlier. Now, it is true that these fruit Pokemon were given a signature move Trop Kick, but a unique move at its introduction is no more special than Shiinotic, Bruxish, or Toucanon. Those Pokemon aren't here just because they're not really that cool. But speaking of, it's pretty difficult to make pure grass anything but a liability. However, the Tsarina line actually makes it work. Not only is it among the best of the edible fruit Pokemon, but also one of the top in the plant woman trope that comes up, on par with Roserade even without the extra typing. I was pleasantly surprised when I saw players using Tsarina in Scarlet and Violet like it was a brand new Pokemon, choosing to use it even over the Smoliv line, likely because they wanted a faster physical attacker with easy access to heavy hitters like High Jump Kick or Acrobatics, not to mention helpful utilities like U-Turn, Knock Off, or even Rapid Spin, plus a signature ability that blocks all priority moves. If there had been a grass type like this in the first couple of generations, we might have had a lot more respect for the type in general, since this majestic queen still shines. Even when the rest of the region is filled with more prominent grass, she will still stomp out the rest of the competition. Number 4. Palossand. When I first saw Sandygast, I thought it was a brilliant idea. I've wanted a sand-based Pokemon for years. The closest thing we ever got before was Hippowdon, but it wasn't made out of sand. And even better than just saying, sure, it's a living sandcastle, whatever, like maybe some past item Pokemon would do, they went the extra mile and made it a ghost, giving it real lore reasons for its origins. and then that continued into Palossand, obviously, since it is explicitly told that Palossand likes to lure in prey and drag their bodies deep into the sands until they perish, where the grudges held by their spirits for their untimely demise give life to new Sandygast. But aside from their great design inspirations, they're pretty good in a pinch. Ground and Ghost is a type pairing with 3 immunities, and sure, they are incredibly slow, but they have the unique combination of physical defense but special attack. So it's got a niche that not many other Pokemon have, and even then its defenses can be bolstered even more by its signature water compaction ability, which when hit with a water attack raises its defense by 2 stages, meaning that you won't get hit with your weakness for free. On top of that, they have great move pools with their stab typings, but also a ton of coverage, along with inherent absorption attacks, and the also signature Shore Up move that restores half of its HP and does even better in sandstorms. The worst part is the rather ludicrously high level at which Sandygast evolves, and I guess being a bit overshadowed by the other ghosts in Alola, but these haunted sand dunes have been in every generation since their debut, so they seem to be holding pretty steady despite not getting any Z moves or regional forms or anything. I guess because they don't really need it, as they are going to be able to contribute in pretty much any scenario. Number 3. Toxapex. It's funny how Pokemon come out of nowhere to surprise you, but I don't think anybody would have pegged Toxapex as one of the major threats to come from Alola before the Sun and Moon games came out. But this poisonous sea star is somehow a perfect storm converging to make this Pokemon a terror. Water and Poison is already a good enough defensive typing, but when paired with its comically large defenses, it becomes a wall that strikes dread into the hearts of sailors everywhere. Not only will Toxapex be able to sit on the field and soak up hits, but it's also got reliable healing options to draw out any battle, like Recover or even the Regenerator hidden ability. But if you don't like that one, it's also got the signature ability Merciless, which lets all of its attacks become critical hits on a poisoned target. That would be fine on its own, but when paired with its signature move, Baneful Bunker, a protecting move that poisons anyone who touches it, and you're looking at some scarily efficient synergy for this Brutal Star Pokemon. It may have been pretty difficult to find when first introduced, but they've maintained a presence in the games each generation, so you would be wise to be prepared for running across one of these, or else say goodbye to the next half an hour of your time. Number 2. Mudsdale. We got a horse Pokemon back in Gen 1, and apparently that was good enough for the next 20 years. Zebras don't count. But how would you even differentiate a new horse at all? Well, instead of focusing on its speed, make it a big, powerful draft horse. And sure, go ahead and cover it in mud while you're at it. Thus, Mudsdale was born. And they put it to work right away, becoming a crucial ride Pokemon in Alola, letting you effortlessly traverse over rocky terrain. And frankly, it's just so satisfying to stroll down the street on the backs of one of these beautiful earthen equines. While its defense may not be as absurd as Toxapex, it's still impressive when paired with its 100s in attack and HP. And if that didn't make it strong enough, these Pokemon have the signature ability Stamina, where with every hit, their already high defense gets boosted. If you endure one turn of a double slap, you'll basically become unstoppable. And honestly, this being on Mudbray as well is great, because it's generally found relatively early on, and the level 30 evolution cap that can too often feel dragged out isn't so bad when Mudbray gets buffed with every bit of damage that it takes. Also, despite Mudsdale being pure ground, it learns a decent amount of fighting coverage by level up, and of course plenty of rock and steel outside of that, so you can rest assured knowing that it isn't a one-trick pony. The horse moratorium seems to have subsided more recently, so I doubt they'll have to resort to a regional form of these Pokemon anytime soon, but luckily they don't seem to need it. Number 1. Golisopod. In all honesty, I probably would have included a Rockwanid here if it weren't a totem Pokemon, because I just love everything about it pretty much, but personal taste aside, it's fair to say that Golisopod is even better in most every way. For such a notoriously wimpy first stage, it's quite inspiring to see what a massive change Golisopod is, truly reminding us to be careful of who you make fun of in middle school. This imposing insect is incredibly slow, but a brilliant physical attacker, and actually it's surprising that its defense is its highest stat. I guess that puts its category of the hard-scale Pokémon into perspective as a defining trait. But that durability comes in handy because Golisopod actually has a pretty objectively bad gimmick, that being Emergency Exit, forcing it out as it takes sufficient damage. Controlled switching is a pivotal strategy, but being at the mercy of others can make it hard to be effective. However, Golisopod manages to do just that. So not only does it have the bulk to last more than one hit, even on the special side, but it can also turn that liability into an advantage with its signature move, First Impression. This bug attack has 90 power with full accuracy, but only works on the first turn that you're in battle, so it's a much harder hitting fake out. Well, this is where the enemy forcing you out backfires, since you get to shoot it off at least twice if not more per battle, not to mention all of the hard hitting water it's packing like Liquidation or Razor Shell, or hey, even Aqua Jet or Sucker Punch to help you overcome your lacking speed. It's not easy training up a Wimpod, which may be part of the reason why Golisopod isn't in Gen 9, but despite seeming like a favorite of the developers, Golisopod never got its own Z-move, nor any spotlight as a Totem or even Illumina Pokémon outside of being used by the evil team. It's just interesting how a Pokémon that on paper has pretty drastic lows and highs manages to cobble them together into something not only workable, but frankly rather frightening. Golisopod is a wimp no more. But those are just some of the best Alola Pokémon that are still great without receiving excess attention. Do you think Totems shouldn't count and that I was wrong for not talking about Salazzle and Vikavolt anyway? Let me know down in the comments. Also be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And until next time, stay grounded.